Okay, so thank you everybody for coming tonight. It's another warm night, which I was hoping it wasn't going to be because I can't stand the heat. And thank you to all the members of the public who've turned up and to all the public speakers. We've got 3 applications on tonight, and it's probably going to be a longish meeting. So if people want to leave in between the applications because you don't need to stay, then that's fine. So apologies for absence. I've had 3. That's Councillor Fran Victory, Councillor Malcolm Victory and Councillor Jenny Watkins. Can I ask members to make any declarations of interest? I know some may well have done a written one, but if you need to make one now, can you make one? Jeremy?
Just a question. On council-owned properties, do the exec need to declare an interest?
In theory, they do, don't we? I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a member of the exec, I need to declare an
And
interest.
me. John, you're on the exec.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Member of the exec, so we need to declare an interest because it's property. Yeah. And you, Mark. That's nearly everybody. Hello, David. Nearly everybody. Okay. So I'll confirm the previous minutes. So I'd like a proposer, please. Do you want to propose? Beverly, and a seconder, John. Thank you very much. So I'll accept that as a true record then in terms of the minutes. Okay, so Chair's announcements. There was a site visit yesterday on the 3 applications. Apologies that I couldn't make it. Unfortunately, I was at a dental specialist in Hereford, so mega books, but there we go. I know quite a few members did attend, and thank you to officers for organising that. So I'll go through the officers in attendance. We've got next to me Simon Jones, Development Manager, and he's going to be presenting the Cows Farm application and the Hill Centre application. I've got Lee Walton next to Simon, who's presenting the Grove Farm application. I've got Emily Alport, who is the Development Manager Lead Officer. I don't think this is your first time at committee, isn't it, Emily? So welcome. I've got Rachel Charrington Walker, who most of you will know, who's legal advisor. Natalie Thornton, senior lawyer, who I think will be taking over from Rachel eventually. And Jennifer Hilton Trout, who's our Democratic Services Officer. I'll also introduce at the end, to that end, my left, Ben Sim, who's the Highways Development Manager and Control Manager at Worcestershire County Council. Ben's actually here to answer any questions on the Hill Centre application. So you should all have had an update sheet. I'm conscious that some of you said you haven't received it. And Jenny, thank you. Jenny actually brought some spare copies along today. And it is quite a detailed update sheet. Do you think we need to give members time to read it? It's quite a lot of it. No. Okay, yeah, you've had it since sort of this morning lunchtime, so if you haven't read it, then you might be able to skim through it in between. I actually did read it, so it's a good read. Not quite bedtime reading, but a good read. And thank you to officers for doing that as well. Okay, so I'll go straight on to the applications. So the first one is the land at Grove Farm in Pendock. Site visit yesterday, and Lee is going to present this application. So could I ask you to do that, Lee, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If I can first take you through the slides. Okay, we've got the aerial photograph that is showing the site outlined in red. We've got the access to the site that's shown opposite the listed building that's referred to in the report. On the adjacent land to the just below the access point that you can see there in the rectangle and beyond towards the village, there's a residential application at the moment for housing that is pending a decision, and we see beyond that Pendock School and of course the alignment of the M50 at the southern boundary. We've got the location plan, we've got public footpaths that run alongside the motorway and also along the the western boundary shown there with the red outline. We've also got the point of connection to the national grid, which is shown to the eastern side there. We've also got revised plan that you can see in front of you. So we've got a rectangular area to the west, just below the point of access, which would be an in-depth landscaping that's proposed. Which one is it? This one? Yeah. Okay, the block plan. A drawing of the solar array sections. We've got the design of the solar panels. They'd be up to 3.3 meters at the highest point. An image of the storage container that's to be located within the northwestern corner of the site, typically about 2.5 meters high, excluding the base. The base is depending on each site, but let's say about 0.3 of a meter. We've got the fencing. This would be a sort of typical view if you're coming under the motorway at this point on the public footpath, looking at the site. And then we're into the photographs. So this is the view seen from the just past the school. So we're looking towards that red outline. That red line that I put in is approximately the western boundary for the solar array. We've got the point of access for construction traffic, and then moving along the road, the site itself seen from the roadside. And then finally we've got a view from the east. Can you move it back to a plan? The proposal represents a small-scale solar site located adjacent to the M50 motorway outside of the national landscape and positioned away from Pendock village, where arguably the semi-industrial presence would not be viewed to abut and expand the village's existing footprint. The revised national planning policy framework strengthens the previous support given renewable and low carbon energy and affords its provision a substantial weight when determining planning applications. The committee report, of course, also refers to substantial weight. The revised framework therefore removes any possible ambiguity. Local concerns about the drainage are noted. In considering the application, this was drawn to the attention of the lead local flood authority, who were consulted, along with the Land Drainage Partnership. It is important to acknowledge that planning permission is not required to address existing issues, but to ensure that the proposed development does not add to existing problems. Planning conditions seek to address the on-site issues. Landscape is a concern raised by the Council's landscape officer. The committee report recognises that there are harms engaged, albeit these are localised. The national landscape response confirms the proposal would not engage a negative effect for the setting of the national landscape. It is not to be expected that the presence of the solar array would be hidden. Effective screening is capable of being brought forward to soften the presence of the solar array infrastructure. The landscape objection should be afforded moderate weight, but set alongside the substantial weight afforded the solar array. There's one final thing I want to bring to your attention. I would propose an additional planning condition to cover the point of access and to secure details to provide improvements that are capable of accommodating two-way HGV movements in accordance with the highways response. and also to reinstate as appropriate following the construction phase. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Lee. So I'll move on to public participation now. I've got Mr. Ian Davis from the Parish Council. Ian, would you like to step up to speak? And you know you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. Pendock Parish Council objects most strongly to this proposal. Pendock's ribbon settlement pattern has only 12% of parish homes within its 200-metre wide defined settlement boundary, so the village extends well beyond this. This site lies within the village, which is why some homes are less than 20 metres away from this installation. 22 dwellings will suffer moderate solar glare effects, along with the same effects for road safety. This is unacceptable for a village location. Runoff from the site regularly floods the adjacent road and properties. The introduction of so much hard surfacing from the panels will increase the speed of water runoff, with only swales to catch and channel the water. This will worsen local flooding, as there is no drainage strategy, no balancing pond, nor runoff calculations to demonstrate otherwise. The site topography, its location, and 3.3 metre high panels cannot be mitigated adequately. The proposal does not complement nor integrate with the character of the landscape setting and will become a dominant industrial type feature, all contrary to South Worcestershire Plan policies. The site was not chosen on its merits, as it was proposed to mistakenly link to a speculative adjacent development. This solar site is clearly unsuitable when weighed against government guidance and South Worcestershire Plan policies. There is overwhelming local opposition, demonstrated by 2 well-attended public meetings involving the majority of parishioners, where there was unanimous objection. In conclusion, government guidance states local planning authorities should consider the potential impacts on the local environment and the views of local communities when identifying suitable solar sites. The properly assessed adverse effects of this proposal, combined with the strength of local opposition, clearly outweigh the benefits of the scheme, and the application should be refused. Finally, I wish to introduce an additional and significant material planning factor the report has not considered. Government policy on solar farms states that LPA should consider the cumulative impacts where several solar proposals come forward in the same locality. The adopted South Worcestershire Plan has allocated a 11.5 hectare solar site 2 fields away from this location, which is not considered in the report. Both sites are visible from the Malvern Hills, so approval of this smaller site in isolation will jeopardise a much bigger solar development. This report is therefore deficient in this matter. The recommendation of approval is not compliant with government policy as far as this is concerned, and jeopardises a much bigger solar farm, particularly relevant where there's a drive for renewable energy. So you are jeopardising a bigger prize. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, can I just add, I'm conscious I've introduced a new significant material planning factor here that members have no information on, because it's not in your report. I'm happy to elaborate if it helps.
What I'll do, I'll ask officers to respond. Okay. So if we go through the representations first, and then we can come back to the debate.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got, next I've got Mrs. Claire Teague, who's a resident and an objector.
Okay, there are major deficiencies in the application's evidence and the higher levels of harm than those claimed. The planning officer seeks to resolve these issues through landscaping and placing conditions on the application rather than asking for essential reports to be completed. There are no benefits to the local community as claimed. The school is already generating its own solar power, and the housing that this site was originally intended to service has not yet been approved. The applicant has not considered the safety of the residents of School Lane and has demonstrated this by placing the panels and the battery units as close to the housing as possible. The site has been designed solely to protect the applicant's house planning application that's pending. The location is not suitable. It is high quality agricultural land in the heart of the village. Several houses are just 20 metres away and will suffer considerable loss of amenity. The original documents are inaccurate, citing an equestrian facility on the eastern border, which is in fact 3 small business units, and they have not been consulted at all in this planning application, a serious error. The 3.3 metre high panels along the northern site will create an overbearing presence, a dark tunnel for over 300 metres along School Lane, just a few metres from those house frontages, including one that's listed. This is in direct opposition to standard industry benchmarks, which recommend 50 to 100 metres from residential properties. It will create an extremely detrimental visual impact for anyone using School Lane on foot, on horseback or in a vehicle. The landscape officer has identified an adverse impact on the environment that cannot be mitigated by planting, and any screening that would have to be so significant that it would actually create a problem itself. The development would result in material injury to our residential amenity and conflicts with the core design principles of the National Planning Policy Framework and the SWDP. This is not a passive solar site. The inclusion of inverters and batteries in shipping containers near to the roadside, again just 20 metres from houses, makes this industrialisation of the rural character at the heart of the community, creating several risks, including noise pollution, fire safety and chemical hazard. In terms of noise pollution, the standard industry benchmark recommends that these things should be placed 150 metres to 250 metres from residential properties and 300 to 400 metres from a school, particularly if that school has SEN pupils. The local school is just 200 metres away and has a higher than average SEN cohort. There has been no noise assessment undertaken, and this again is a major omission. Lithium-ion technology carries a verified risk of chemical chain reaction, a fire of 1,000 degrees centigrade that is difficult to extinguish, just 20 metres within the toxic, just 20 metres from houses, and this is well within the toxic plume. Fire engine access is poor, the lane is narrow and often blocked. There is a huge health and safety risk, especially given recent local wildfires. The fire service has not been asked to complete a risk assessment or a battery safety management plan. We do not believe it's possible to mitigate these issues. There are better, larger sites not within the village with fewer negative impacts. Okay. Oh, yeah. The council isn't in possession of full information on this development, and we don't believe that it should be approved. It should be rejected.
Okay, thank you. So now we've got Mr. Peter Tufnell, who's the agent. Peter, I think you're sharing the presentation, aren't you, with Hilary? Is that right? Yeah. 1 minute and 2 minutes, I'm told. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members. This small-scale solar site is located adjoining the M50 motorway, outside of the national landscape and close to Pendock Village. There are no objections from the Malvern Hills National Landscape Body, the Highway Authority or your Heritage Officer. The proposals accord with the development plan and national policy. They will also assist in delivering the Council's climate emergency strategy. The applicants have worked with your officers, ensuring that information requirements and any concerns have been addressed and mitigated as necessary. As a result of the applicants' efforts, under your officers' guidance, the development will not result in any demonstrable harm. I share your officers' planning balance conclusions, and I respectfully request that you accept your officers' recommendation to grant consent. Thank you.
Hilary, thank you. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. I'm Hilary Brymer, a Pendock Parish Councillor, but I'm speaking as a resident in support of this application. In August 2025, before the Parish Council meetings in September, I set out my views in writing to the Parish Council about the solar panel application as follows. The solar farm will contribute to the UK's transition away from fossil fuels and towards a low-carbon economy. By generating clean electricity, it will help reduce reliance on finite resources and decrease harmful greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the land can be used for a dual purpose, allowing for sheep to graze between the panels, thus maintaining a productive agricultural use while providing ecological benefits and biodiversity net gain. In an era of rising energy costs and global uncertainty, the development of local renewable energy sources is more critical than ever. This solar farm will contribute to a more resilient and secure energy supply, reducing our dependence on foreign energy imports. The panels will be low to the ground and are screened by existing hedgerows and trees, and to assist further mitigation, additional screening has been identified by Pager Power. The site's rural context and the temporary nature of the infrastructure make it an appropriate location for this type of development. I therefore applaud your officers for such a professional, balanced approach in the report, and I sincerely hope you will support and grant planning permission for this much-needed local enterprise. Thank you.
Can I stop you, please, because we can't have people shouting out in the middle of the meeting. This is being streamed live, so you'll all be on YouTube shouting around. So please don't shout and give respect to all the speakers. Thank you. Ward members, Councillor Jenny Watkins can't be here, I'm afraid, tonight. So she's asked Councillor Wilde if she will speak on behalf of her. Chris, are you going to stay there? You can welcome to stay there if you want to. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Chair and members of the Planning Committee, I've not had the benefit, Jenny's not had the benefit of seeing what was handed out. So this has been drafted without that information. You should have received Councillor Watkins' full statement several days ago. This amounted to approximately a 15-minute speech. So I've tried to hone it down today, and I hope I'm true to what she said. And I apologise if I'm not. I'm going to read a condensed version today to comply with the committee's 5-minute speaking limit. I want to begin by making one thing clear. Councillor Watkins and the residents she represents are not opposed to renewable energy. Renewable energy is necessary, but it must be built in the right place. For PennDOC, this is the wrong place. There have been 47 objections, an objection from PennDOC Parish Council, concerns from PennDOC Primary School, and an objection from the Cown's own landscape officer. A public meeting attended by more than 60, or I think I heard yesterday, 80 local people resulted in unanimous opposition. These concerns are not simply opposition to change. They relate to the particular circumstances of this site and its impact on the village. The proposal would introduce around 5,800 panels, up to 3.3 metres high, together with security fencing, inverters, battery storage and other infrastructure, into an open agricultural field close to homes, public footpaths and the village school. The school is already at capacity and is an important part of the village community, with a significant number of pupils with additional needs. It also already has rooftop solar panels and has generated a high proportion of its own electricity from them around a decade. Claimed benefit to the school from this proposal therefore needs careful consideration. Residents have also raised concerns about the potential effects of the development on people living and using the area, including noise, glare and general disturbance. The strongest planning concern is landscape and visual impact. The council's own landscape officer objects to the proposal, considering that it would introduce prominent and uncharacteristic elements into the landscape. The effects are assessed as major / moderate adverse, with some potentially major adverse effects. The officer also identifies obstruction to current clear and uninterrupted views from the public footpath, with proposed meaningful screening, potentially taking many years to become effective. That professional objection deserves significant weight. The site is outside of the Malvern Hills National Landscape, but the development would be visible from it. The National Landscape team had disagreed with important parts of the applicant's assessment, including the visibility of the development from Chase End Hill and the level of landscape impact. That difference in professional assessment is something members should consider carefully. There is also acknowledged harm to the setting of the Grade 2 listed longhouse opposite the site. The officer report accepts that the proposal would change its setting from green agricultural and rural open land to a more industrial presence. This is described as less than substantial harm. Curious expression. That does not mean there is no harm. It means the identified harm must be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. There is also an important gap in the evidence about the agricultural land. Council guidance gives preference to previously developed non-agricultural or low-quality land, while national guidance asks whether poor quality land has been used instead of higher quality. Am I sensing?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, Councillor Wild. Yes.
Can I go to the summary then?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
I would like to read about the quality of its Grade 3 land. Members therefore do not know whether it's Grade 3A, which is best and most versatile agricultural land, or Grade B. I will now move on to the conclusion. In summary, there are a number of significant matters for members to weigh. The Council's own landscape officer objects and identifies significant adverse landscape and visual effects. The development would be visible from the Malvern Hills National Landscape, with the National Landscape team identifying a greater impact than the applicant's assessment suggests. There is acknowledged harm to the setting of a Grade 2 listed building. The agricultural quality of the land has not been properly established. There are concerns about flooding, drainage, and the amenity of the nearby residents and the school. I'm nearly there. And some claimed community benefits, including the benefit to the school, have not been established. Renewable energy is important, but that does not make every site appropriate. The question for members is whether this particular location has been shown to be suitable when all these impacts are taken into account. Those are the matters the community asks members to consider carefully when reaching their decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wild. Right, I'm going to open it up to member questions, and if you've got questions for the officers, obviously officers are here to respond. Councillor Owenson.
A couple of questions, if it's okay. The first one is funnily enough on the drawing in front of us. The red line, I assume, highlights the extent of the development, but there's comments on the left-hand side around the restoration of an orchard. And I couldn't quite work out if those were related or not related. So that was the first question. Also, on the earlier drawing in the presentation, there was a further red line over Pendock Village, and I couldn't quite work out if that was because it's part of the same site or if it isn't part of the same site. And that's important from a landscaping perspective. And then the second part, we've heard talk of, and I've just managed to find SWDP 67, which does identify land at Pendock for a solar farm. Is there any way that we can see how close those two developments are?
I'll ask officers to respond. Councillor Owenson.
Thank you, Chairman. The aerial image that shows the red outline with Pendock Primary School around that area should be ignored. It's purely the red outline that's shown where the solar park is located. So this one there. The plans themselves, because this is an aerial image that we've generated, possibly using Google in this case. But the location plan, so there we go. That shows the site. It includes also a blue outline that's part of the application. So the landscaping which comes forward is in response to the possibility that the residential development isn't ultimately coming forward. And on that basis, we have two separate applications, so they both stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak. So what we're looking at here is a revised plan that came forward in response to the concerns about the highway. And as you leave the village, you see that image that I showed during the overheads. You can see the site. So this provides for in-depth planting, screening, essentially. The allocation, it's something that I was aware of, but equally I must admit they are removed. 2 fields makes it sound as though they're on top of one another. That wasn't my appreciation when I was looking at them. This is too small to be able to point to where the allocation is. I believe that you're probably referring to the southwest. There is also another one towards to the north. So yes, I was aware of them, but it's at this point it's unfortunate that it's not in the report. But equally, we weren't close enough for them to matter. It's also important to remember the small scale of the site. This is a large field. They're going to be hedging it. Will be ultimately we're looking at a field which would be occupied.
It's on the map that's up at the moment. So it might be too small scale, but it's there.
So essentially, yes, I'll end there. Sorry.
Do you not know where they... I think Councillor has asked.
Evidently, we haven't got a slide that shows the location of those sites.
So rather than this open up into a wider debate, do you mind if I come back on that then? No. Okay, that's fine. I mean, we're determining this on the application that's before us and not on the site allocation expressed elsewhere. If we can go back to the red line drawing, though, the actual one with the plan, what I'm a bit cautious of, what I'm trying to just understand is, because that red line, for example, doesn't include the existing hedgerow. It doesn't include potentially where I think that there's a new hedgerow going in on one side of the red line, but there's nothing going on the left side of the line. So, I'm just trying to make sure that the planting that's being proposed is actually within the red line and not something that falls out of the planning application, which means the applicant won't have a requirement to do it.
Good point, Jeremy. Thank you.
If I may, on that point, it's not uncommon when we're requesting landscaping by condition for that to be within land edge blue. It doesn't have to be within the land edge red to secure it. So that area, that whole tranche of land to the west of the proposed development is in the blue line by the looks of it.
Answered your question, Councillor Ainsley.
It has. Am I allowed to make a comment as well, or do you want?
You can make a comment. Yes.
I'm just going to make one comment about the application, and this is where I think there is a compelling reason locally. There's a compelling reason nationally for people to introduce low carbon sources of power, and renewables and solar powers are something that generally is supported, and indeed within the SWDP is also supported. I do think, though, within the Malvern Hills area, the Malvern Hills National Landscape, and within the Malvern Hills Trust areas, we have a rather unique setting here, which is also protected within the SWDP. So I think the question for the councillors today is, where does the balance lie? Does it lie with the provision of the renewables, or does it lie with the protection of the landscape? And I'll just draw an analogy to allowing housing within the Malvern Hills area. So I've been in planning applications where there's been a single house on the edge of a existing development. Welland is one that springs to mind, where there's been a lot of debate about whether or not you will allow an additional house to be built, because the concern is that if you set a precedent and allow an additional house to be built, that enables other people to say, well, they were allowed to build here, they were allowed to build here, and it leads to an erosion of the character of the area. So I think councillors need to consider today, particularly if there's another renewable energy site going in larger and locally, is this a contributing factor to the reduction of the landscape, the AONB, the Malvern Hills National Landscape, the Malvern Hills Trust, and does that outweigh the benefit of the renewables? I think it's interesting that the landscape people took one view and our landscape officers took another. So I'm interested to see where the balance is going to lie with this committee.
Just confirm that obviously we can only take this application on its merits, so other applications we can't consider. So I'll just make that clear. Simon, do you want to add anything at all? No, okay, right. Councillor Nielsen.
Very much, Chair. It may be, well, I didn't actually fully understand the blue line point. Does that mean that the landscaping is part of our considerations and a factor that we are determining this evening, i.e. it's condition of any application granted? Could you just answer that?
Yes, yes, we are looking at it. Condition 7, I think, is the condition.
Thank you. And then the second question, recognising the point about the fact that we are just considering the application in front of us this evening, but at the same time, the point was made that does this small site jeopardise a larger site, which is in the SWDP? I just wondered, is that something that you could answer for us at all this evening?
We will be reliant upon the national landscape in their response. My view was sort of being aware of the sites on a different plan, that they weren't close enough. It's really important to underscore the fact that this is quite small scale in one respect, having dealt with larger sites. So yeah, that's what.
Sorry, could you just tell me what that means? I just don't quite understand what that means. Does it mean that it does jeopardise it?
No, I don't know that it does jeopardise it. We're reliant on the national landscape to come back. Remember, the national landscape is a designated landscape. We're then coming down to the local landscape and our landscape officers' input at that point at a more local level, but that doesn't have protection as the national landscape, which we have to deal with.
I've got
a couple of points. I have to say, to have a portable storage container right next to the main section which faces the village is very poor design as far as trying to convince people that this won't be an eyesore. No mitigation there at all on that. And I don't actually understand what you've now said, because during your speech on this, you said that there could be a part 2 on that plot. And now you're saying it's guaranteed that that's going to be landscaped. Is that landscape for all time, or could there then be a further application on that, doubling the size of what is in front of us now?
you can never say no in planning. Things change. In terms of the landscape, we're dealing with this application. In terms of dealing with this application, if we didn't have planting there, I'm afraid it would be very obvious as you went along the road. If the housing comes forward, then the housing will obliterate that view, so we don't have to mind in one sense, if I can be so blunt.
Okay. Councillor Driscoll.
Yeah, I have a kind of couple of questions. One, in my experience, the impacts are not just around the kind of physical infrastructure, but the kind of cable and the works to connect to the national grid can also create significant impact. Reading the report, it doesn't look like any cabling information or impact has been provided. I might be wrong with that. Could you maybe just explain using the diagram how and where the national grid connection is going to be? And my second question, I suppose, is about the noise. We've heard from residents' concerns around noise from this. Isn't it usual for a kind of some sort of noise assessment to be conducted? I'm not sure how much noise these developments create. I'm imagining there's some as it goes through various inverters, but has any assessment at all been undertaken with regard to noise at all?
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask you to respond, Lee? Thank you.
With regard to noise, there's not been an assessment made or received. I think it's very important that we do emphasise the fact that this is small scale, and as with all planning, it's about a proportionate approach, and so therefore this is where we are with this one. The noise itself, I can only turn to the M50, which passes the site, so there's already some noise there. The distance to the school is also, again, quite far, but again, I would come back to the fact that this is small scale. Having dealt with much larger sites where all of this information is very relevant, I might add. The point of connection shown is on the map, which is the pole. We do have a condition that was provided by Highways that is still there, which provides flexibility in the event of the unknown. Likewise, I should point out that in response to the neighbours' comments, that conditions 15 and 16 are to do with fire and the presence of batteries. So I think we've got to brace them about sort of about and braces approach to this. It's detail that can be taken up if needed. Having dealt with the much larger one site at Monkfield, Powick and Lysington, I had a lot of doing some throwing back and forwards with the fire service, who were as helpful as they could be. These are conditions that have been, the conditions we've got here are very much all encompassing, I would say, because they are basically taken from that much bigger scheme. So it's for the applicant ultimately to ensure that they address those, and the list, again, it was given to us by the fire service.
Thank you, Lee. Can't see. Oh, Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Council. Can I just thank the officers for their report, and can I also thank the Parish Chairman for coming. I appreciate when Parish Councillors come along and also members of the public. Could we just go back to the slide, please, showing the fields? Thank you very much. Partly just to satisfy my own curiosity, can the Parish Chair point out to us which field on there, if any, is proposed for any of the other solar farms? I heard members of the public shout out. I'm quite interested to see if it's there or not. If you could just point it out.
So you know, is it? I was told you said it wasn't on the map. Is it on the map? And if so, where? If not, fine. But where is it?
This field here that extends down to there, and hence 11.5 hectares in the south. So there's two fields where 1, 2.
Is that field? Where your finger is, where they're proposing to put another solar farm?
11.5 hectares, yes.
Okay.
In the
Oh,
locality,
all right.
in the vicinity.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. That's all I just wanted to know.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any other members wishing to speak, in which case I'll end the debate and I'll ask for a proposer and a seconder. So who would like to make a proposal? Thank you, Councillor Owenson.
Yeah. So having listened to the debate, I come back to this piecemeal erosion of the rural nature of our area. I take the point that this is a small development in planning terms. I don't think it's small if you're living next door to it. And my real concern is that if we say outside of the SWDP 67, we are prepared to consider small developments across the Malvern Hills rural landscape, we're just leaving ourselves open to the glare and the erosion of the rural and picturesque nature of our countryside. I'm inclined to agree with the council's landscape officer, and I'm therefore suggesting that we don't approve this, that we refuse it on the basis that it falls contradictory to SWDP 31 National Landscape, particularly on Part A, SWDP 34, the character, particularly Point A, small Part 2. And I think it's worth, I think there are valid comments about the flood risk. In this day and age where you get runoff, there doesn't seem to be, recognising that these are solar panels, they are going to concentrate water, push it into gullies, exacerbate the risk of flooding. So I think it also contradicts 38 and 39. But if any other councillors are happy to second that and are considering that it contradicts other policies, I'm happy to consider adding those on as well.
I'm just going to ask officers because I think Simon was going to give an update comment, weren't you, Simon, or not? He's writing something down.
I was just making sure I got all the policies. You was it 32? Was that 31, 34, 34? Yeah, I got 38, 39. Okay, so we've got, if I've understood correctly, two concerns. One about the impact on the landscape, and the other about increasing flood risk. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Understood.
Okay. Nothing else to say. Nothing's changed in the MPPF. No, okay, so we've got a proposal from Councillor Owenson. Have we got a seconder? Right, we haven't got a seconder. What do we do now? We've got a seconder. Oh, we've got one now. Sorry, Paul, I didn't see you there. So you're seconding Councillor Owenson's proposal. Thank you. Just to make it clear, thank you.
So just to summarise, if that's okay, the motion is to refuse the application for the following reasons: SWDP 31, 34, 38, 39, with the final wording of the refusal reasons being delegated to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure, and the technical reason of not having a completed Section 106 to secure the relevant Section 106 contributions. So could I ask for all those in favour? And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the motion has failed.
Okay, so we need to go back to the substantive motion then. So we'll need a proposal again. Thank you, Councillor Nielsen. And we'll need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Palmer. And we'll now take that to the vote. So over to you, Natalie.
Okay. Okay. So all those in favour of approval, in respect of the officer recommendation and also the updates. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
This is with the additional condition that Lee recommended.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And all those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That motion is carried.
Thank you, everybody. Hmm? We'll move on swiftly to item 2. So that is Kale's Farm application. And I'll ask Simon to do a presentation on this one. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Chairman. We have an application for seeking the approval of reserve matters for access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, following the grant of outline permission for up to 200 dwellings. So the key point to make at this juncture is that there is an existing outline planning permission that is valid for up to 200 dwellings, so the principle's been accepted. It's also a site, we'll see from a subsequent slide, that's allocated in the SWDPR. So moving on to the slides. Here's a plan of Malvern showing the site in context. So it's to the northwest, alongside an existing housing development, which I think most of us know as the north site, and it's adjacent to the west of that location. There's the application site boundary. So we've got Sayers Avenue to the south, and the existing residential development to the east there. Here's an extract from the based on the local plan, which just shows some context and site constraints, proximity of the Malvern Hills National Landscape. That's the area shaded pink on the left-hand side of the plan. Malvern Trinity Conservation Area to the southeast. Some of the ecological constraints in the vicinity. Here's just an aerial photograph of the site. And a few of the slides, apologies just for fitting them on in a manner which you could see the whole of the plan. I've had to rotate them through 90 degrees, hence the helpful north point on the left there. So Sayers Avenue is sort of running on the western side of the plan there. So that's the site plan. You can see the area of proposed built development in this area, some of the drainage ponds that are proposed, and an area of open space on the western side of the site. And we have then the layout plan, which is in two parts. This is the northern part of the site and the southern part, showing the open space to the west again there, and some typical street scenes. A plan showing the heights of the proposed development. There's nothing higher than 2.5 stories on this development, and those are scattered around in various locations. You just might be able to make them out in the pink there at those various locations. An affordable housing plan which shows the disposition of the various tenures of affordable housing, rented, shared ownership and first homes.
Simon, could I just stop you for a second?
Certainly.
I'm just going to check that Neville's okay at the back.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Neville, are you okay there at the back? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
My taxi don't run.
Oh, thank you, Simon.
Don't
Sorry.
wait. I'll have to wait.
A landscaping plan showing obviously the green infrastructure and again the ponds. An external materials plan, and that's it. So your officers are recommending that the reserve matters be approved subject to the conditions set out in your report. The substance of the update sheet is primarily focused on just correcting the now out-of-date references to the National Planning Policy Framework that appeared in the report. So you've got some paragraph references, and then you've got what was referred to into the old paragraph references from the framework, and what they've been replaced with in terms of policies in the new framework. Just for ease of reference, there's not really any significant change in your officer's opinion between given the adoption of the new framework in terms of how we'd regard this scheme. The sort of controls and on various aspects around design and reserve matters have been carried forward, but in a different form of words, and have now formulated themselves into policies in the new framework. So there's nothing additional, there's nothing changed as a consequence of that we need to draw members' attention to. Yes, that ends the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. We don't have any parish council representative, town council in this case, I suppose. We don't have an objector. We do have applicant's agent, Mr. Daniel Pryor. Thank you, Daniel. You've got 3 minutes.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this Reserve Matters application for Cales Farm. First and foremost, this application will deliver 200 much needed new homes in Morven on a site specifically allocated for residential development. At a time when housing affordability remains a major challenge for local families, this scheme makes a significant contribution to meeting the housing need in a sustainable location. Importantly, the scheme provides 80 affordable homes representing 40% of all dwellings. Those homes include social rented properties, first homes and shared ownership dwellings, creating opportunities for young people, key workers, first-time buyers and families who would otherwise struggle to remain within the community. The proposed affordable housing mix has been informed by registered providers on Morven's preferred list. Feedback from 3 reputable housing associations support the mix primarily focused on 2 and 3 beds. Whilst the scheme has been prepared With regards to the strategic housing market assessment, it is important that the affordable housing is deliverable and consideration must be given to the preferences of the organisations that will ultimately acquire and manage those homes. Barratt West Midlands considers the proposed mix strikes an appropriate balance. The second major benefit is the quality of place being created. The layout has evolved considerably over the course of the application and enhances the master plan approved at committee last year. Officers note that it now incorporates a more natural and less rigid street pattern, stronger green infrastructure and a design approach that responds more carefully to the site's context. A particularly important feature is the retention of the substantial southern western area of the public open space. This land forms significant landscape buffer between the new homes and the wider countryside. It provides a recreational space for residents and contributes to the wider landscape strategy. We are pleased to present a landscape-led scheme that includes structural landscaping, green corridors, street trees and additional planting. Officers conclude that the development broadly accords with the approved landscape mitigation strategy and that any visual impacts have been reduced to an acceptable level. The application also delivers substantial environmental benefits. This scheme ensures not only the protection of the existing ecological assets, but also the delivery of long-term habitat enhancements and biodiversity improvements. The scheme also incorporates sustainable drainage systems, helping to manage surface water responsibly while creating attractive landscape features throughout the development. From a transport perspective, it is important to note that Worcestershire County Highways raises no objection. Perhaps most importantly, the proposal represents the delivery of an allocated strategic housing site as envisaged through the local plan making process, assessed through outline planning stage and scrutinised through this application. At every stage, the principle has been found acceptable. To conclude, this is not simply a housing scheme. It is a development that delivers substantial green infrastructure and public benefits. The landscape-led layout incorporates significant open space, children play facilities, pedestrian links and sustainable drainage features. For all the reasons I have outlined, I respectfully ask the committee to support officer recommendation and approve this reserve matters application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'll go to the ward members now. So I'll go to John Rain first. Councillor Rain.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's been a while coming, this one, but no surprise that it has come. I'm saddened personally that it has come because it's not something, not a piece of development that I ever looked forward to. Malvern Vale has been a great success to date, and I suppose I've no reason to suggest that this extension, which is how I see it, as of Malvern Vale, won't also be a success. But nevertheless, it is a very prominent in the eye line from the hills, and that's what always worries me most and has worried me about Malvern Vale. From the north end of the hill, it's the sort of housing it is and the sort of density that the housing is at makes it a very much in-your-face piece of urban extension, and this will extend that extension, obviously. It's with reluctance that it has arrived for me, but we need the housing, and we always said we would have housing here. So in a sense, we're only fulfilling our own local plan, and I have therefore no good grounds for opposing it. But I do want to express my sadness, really, that this chunk of land, and of course it's not the end, there's another little piece, another significant piece, that no doubt will be in this room for consideration before too long. I rest my case there. Thank you, Chair.
This is only for the reserve matters.
Indeed,
John,
yes.
so the principle has already been agreed,
accepted,
as you know.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I agree.
Councillor McVeigh.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm not able to vote this evening because I'm not a member of the committee, I do appreciate the opportunity to share my views on this application and the process to date as ward member. So as we've heard, this site has been earmarked for development for a long time, since before I was elected, which is almost 10 years ago. And the process has been long and, in my experience, frustrating at times, as we sought for this development to be the best it can be. And despite the continued efforts of officers and councillors, in my view, it still falls short. When last discussed at Planning Committee at the outline permission phase, I felt confident that councillors and officers would be able to come up with a plan which brought forward homes fit for the future, Very sadly, I'm here today believing this is not the case. At the meeting in March, Malvern Hills National Landscape said the plans were unsatisfactory and that the developer had been resistant to its suggestions. During meetings I attended in the following months, the developer continued to show resistance to the suggestion of our planning officers and tree and landscape officer in relation to urban design, drainage solutions and green and blue infrastructure. Resistant to my suggestions about needing rainwater harvesting and future-proof living conditions, such as flipping the layout to incorporate sleeping accommodation on the ground floor. Experts say that this summer is the coolest we're going to have. So why are we getting bog standard boxes as usual rather than innovative homes for the future? I don't think this plan is good enough for this site. Paragraph 136 of the former NPPF states that planning policies and decisions should ensure that new streets are tree-lined, with opportunities taken to incorporate trees elsewhere in developments unless there are clear and compelling reasons otherwise. Paragraph 139 goes on to say that development that is not well designed should be refused. Paragraphs 162 and 163 state that plans should take a proactive approach to mitigating and adapting to climate change, including the risk of overheating and drought from rising temperatures. In addition to these issues, the housing tenure is inadequate, meeting the financial needs of the developer rather than housing needs of our residents. This is in contravention to SWDPR 17, housing mix per the Strategic Housing Market Assessment. Market housing is skewed towards the larger units, so 32.5% are 4-bedroom plus units against a policy of 25% maximum. 55% are 3-bed units against a 40% maximum. There are no bungalows or level access homes proposed at all, which in an area with a high percentage of older people who may wish to downsize is bizarre. Affordable home ownership tenures are concentrated in 1 to 3-bed houses with insufficient bungalows or 1 and 2-bedroom flats to meet need. And there's a shortfall of 6 1-bedroom affordable units against a smart identified need. The lead flood authorities raised several technical concerns, and Worcestershire Regulatory Services note that asbestos was identified as a contaminant of concern in the initial conceptual site model, but is subsequently missing from lab reports. In addition to this, it's unclear whether former on-site buildings flagged as requiring investigation have been assessed. In summary, despite maintained formal objections from external bodies, the Council's own tree and landscape officer, and an acknowledged failure to comply with our housing mix policy, committee is recommended to approve the application. Freudian slip. So here we are, with our hands tied behind our backs. An uncompromising developer seeking to maximise profit and lacking the ambition to be innovative, and a government intent on build, and eroding our ability as a local planning committee to represent the interests of our residents. Realistically, what chance do we have? I would like to thank officers for their efforts. I know that they've worked hard. Despite managing to bring forward a smaller development than that which was originally planned, they must feel hugely frustrated to be in this position. As you'll have seen from the plans, there's still a lot of tarmac and hard standing that you will undoubtedly see from the hills. If I was voting tonight, I'd be voting against. Layout appears to be driven by housing numbers, road geometry and parking, with landscape mitigation fitted around what's left, contrary to policy, which expects natural beauty to be a primary design consideration from the outset. It's also pointed out that the roofscape is not sufficiently recessive and the colour palette proposed does not go far enough to ensure a consistent landscape-sensitive outcome. To quote Catherine from the National Landscape Team, for a site of this sensitivity, the structural landscape should more clearly organise the development. In essence, as it stands, it currently contravenes SWDPRs 1, 5, 7, 17, 19, 28, 29, 31 and 40 and several policies contained in the Malvern Town Neighbourhood Plan. If you do decide to approve this application, I would like to see robust conditions included about the planting and maintenance of trees, and that the species of trees recommended by our tree and landscape officer, so the dawn redwood, ginkgo and black pine, be planted, as opposed to the Malus trilobata, I knew I would struggle with that, which will only meet 6 metres at maturity and won't serve its purpose. That an improved watering strategy is secured as recommended by the tree and landscape officer. And also,
Councillor McVeigh, you've had your
I'm coming to my final paragraph, and Councillor White did have 6 minutes and 40 seconds because I was timing. I would like something which seeks assurance that the roads and associated infrastructure will be built to an acceptable standard so that they can be adopted by the Highways Authority, unlike the unsatisfactory situation faced by residents of Malvern Vale, where substandard infrastructure means that the roads, footpaths and street lighting have still not been adopted well over a decade since completion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it up to debate. I've got Councillor Bennett, I think, at the back there.
Yeah, this should never have happened. There were enough objections from the National Landscape, Natural England and our conservation officer. This should never have happened. And I now am looking very hard at those councillors, 9 of you who voted for this, because this was a huge mistake. This is an intrusion onto the hills and it should never have happened in the first place. And what Councillor McVeigh has said is absolutely spot on anyway. But at the end of the day, you know, what on earth are we doing when we are voting for things that basically undermine the entire essence of Malvern completely? And this is just absolutely and utterly wrong.
Councillor Allen, were you wishing to speak? No. Councillor Driscoll?
Yeah, I'm probably going to echo quite a lot that Councillor McVeigh has said, but when I saw these plans, I think my heart sank, to be honest. I think it was 2024 when I think this originally went to planning committee, and I seem to recollect quite a long discussion there. Given that this site is 290 metres, maybe less than that, from a nationally significant landscape, how important the landscaping plans were. I have two particular issues. I think the landscaping is just not good enough. And I think you can see this site quite significantly from the North Hill. And to be effective, as pointed out by our tree and landscape officer, there needs to be much more significant planting, not just on the periphery of this. And I know there's been some discussions to increase the amount of trees on the periphery, but actually those street scene trees, trees that are not just 1.5 metres from the front of the new builds, which are going to restrict them in height anyway, are just not going to cut it. What you need, if you're really going to reduce the landscape impact from our nationally significant landscape, is landscaping initiatives built within the street scene. So it breaks up the boxed nature of this residential estate. That just isn't happening. And as a result, you know, I don't know what sort of, in 2024, we discussed the importance of the developer working with the tree and landscape officer and the national landscape team. I don't see that has been very effective, and both of those have objected to this development. I also, and I'm not going to go on, you know, housing officers have also objected to this development as a development that doesn't provide enough particularly one-bedroom homes, those smaller homes, those affordable homes. So it's not fulfilling that need. And given the situation we faced this summer, the Sustainable Urban Drainage Scheme, yes, we've got a couple of 3 or 4 settlement ponds, but actually those hard landscaping elements are not permeable surfaces. They're not SUD scheme by any stretch of the imagination. So in my view, given the significant impacts in terms of landscape, the developers, in my view, have to go back to the drawing board. Anything close to a significantly landscape has to be of the highest quality. That's what we said in 2024, and that just hasn't happened.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. I've got Councillor Mills at the back, and then I think Councillor Nielsen.
Reading through the documents which were submitted as part of this planning application, two items leapt out at me. The first was from the National Health Service. They submitted a 41-page report, and the main statement they made was the Trust's current capacity is already maximised and will not be able to absorb the increased demand for health care caused by the residents of the proposed development. I fear this is yet another illustration of this council's non-recognition of the need for the town's infrastructure to keep up with its development. The second item that leapt out at me was the document from the Worcester County Council Highways Department, which contradicts our representative over there. The conclusion of the Highways Department, the Highways Authority has undertaken a robust assessment of the planning application and recommends objection on the grounds that insufficient information is provided to demonstrate the proposals would not result in a severe, unacceptable impact on highway safety, contrary to NPPF paragraph 116. I have these documents here with me if anyone wants to see them.
A lot of points being raised, and I know that officers have been scribbling away, and I know that these are points that we've also raised previously, a lot of them. So I'll ask Councillor Nielsen to speak, and then I'll get officers to respond.
Thanks so much. I'm fairly, short point. It was just if the officers could explain to us. I know that the applicant has commented on the trees that are being planted at street level, and some of the comments in discussion have highlighted this point. I just remember there was some point about highways and trees being planted on the street, and the comments of highways around street tree planting. I'd just be interested if the officer could remind us about what those issues were. Thank you.
Well, there's a balance to be struck between meeting the objectives of having adoptable streets in a development and the approach the Highway Authority take to the position of trees in the highway, which influences urban design, and then balanced against the desire to see more trees in the street. You saw from the layout that there are a number of trees along various sections of the development. That's what officers have considered to be acceptable in this case. So it's not without trees. Quite evident on those two plans, I think you can see. Does that address the...
Could I just go back to the point that Councillor Driscoll made about the type of trees?
Yes, well, because this is a reserved matters application, the details of that will almost certainly be encapsulated in one of the drawings and documents that have been submitted as part of this application. I haven't exhaustively shown every last drawing and document on the presentation because there's just too many. If there was concerns about that detail, that forms part of the application. It wouldn't be usual to impose a condition seeking to revisit elements of the detail that are submitted now. because it's not like a full application or an outline application where one can frame a condition to ask for that detail specifically. So we've got what we've got. So if members are unhappy with the specifics of the proposal, they'd need to cite, I think, what they've seen in their own review of the proposal in that respect.
Is the gentleman telling me that highway safety and infrastructure are not reserved matters on a plan which is going to put another 500 residents in Malvern?
Well, to come back on Councillor Mills, sorry, Councillor Mills' points. I think the comment that you've identified, I'm guessing from a review of the documents on the website, is the earlier representation from the Highway Authority on this scheme, because the one that's in the report, and I think it's pretty much the first comment at section 4 of your agendas, doesn't seem to me to be raising objection to the application in its conclusion. It's moved on. Certainly, I think the first iteration may well have raised objection, but there isn't an objection from the Highway Authority. So, and then in respect of the representation from the Acute Hospitals Trust, as opposed to the other branch of the NHS which deal with GP surgeries, because we often get comments from the two separate branches. Their comment, I believe, it may have been a response to an inadvertent consultation from the local planning authority inviting their comment, which shouldn't have been sent. Apologies for that. But their comment was too late and ill-directed, because this is a reserved matters application, and what they were seeking was a financial contribution, which should have been sought at the outline stage had they been inclined to raise it then. So it's not SIL compliant, doesn't meet the tests. That's why we haven't picked that up in terms of being able to facilitate that request, because it's too late.
Can I recommend that in particular you read the full National Health Service submission for this reserved matter application?
I've read it many times. They've churned it out many times. They're obviously keen to capitalise on money from developers to fund what they perceive to be a gap. I won't go into great detail about it, but as it's not really relevant to this proposal, and much legal advice has been sought by this authority and others in Worcestershire on this point, and a view has been taken on it.
Yeah. So basically, Neville, they were too late. They're really too late, which we've seen with other applications as well.
I'm rather concerned that the infrastructure of the town does not appear to form a part of such application.
Emily? Yeah. In respect of the NHS comments, there's obviously within the officer report at page 129, paragraph 7.11.1, that's addressed, and I think it's worth pointing out, obviously, that the principle of development in terms of the quantum of houses that have been approved as part of the outline can't be revisited as part of the reserved matters. So all that members are asked to consider here are the reserved matters. So the quantum of development isn't something that you know, as officers, we would recommend
being considered as part of this, because I think a refusal on elements linked to that would be seen as unreasonable by a planning inspectorate appeal.
Thank you. Jeremy, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, just a couple of points about the trees. One of the things about trees is some people want tall trees to hide the houses. People who live in the houses, as we know in Malvern, want small trees so they can get views. So there is a debate either side on trees. I'm recognising that this is just coming back for the reserve matters. The principle's been approved. The report states that as it is as far in line with our policies as our officers have been able to negotiate with the developers. I believe that it will meet the biodiversity net gain standards going forward. So I would like to commend the officers on doing a good job, and say, hopefully, in today's environment, the householders themselves will take steps to plant the trees they want in their gardens without us dictating them.
I think that's. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Mead.
Yeah, just some comments. As regards the road layout, I think a lot of people agree that the layout on the Vale itself is a bit of a disaster. Having tried to drive round there and the way the cars are parked, etc., is a real nightmare, and you going round blind quite often, having to be careful whether the people come in the other way. Do you believe that this layout is satisfactory in that respect? And the other question I've got, who's going to be responsible for the open spaces, and what guarantee are they that they will be maintained? Because we've seen on other developments in Malvern where the developers have promised all sorts of things, and in the end they've not really maintained the open spaces in the manner that they should have done.
I wasn't involved in the detail of the outline application, but that would have been the key moment to have either dealt with that by a condition requiring a maintenance plan for that, or or encapsulating it in the legal agreement. But yes, it's unusual now for the council to adopt open space, so one would envisage there's be a management company, and then that will be a charge passed on to future residents, I guess, for the maintenance of it.
That's certainly usual. And in terms of the tree question, I look down on this site, so whichever you do, I'll still see it.
I just on the trees, because I know that's been a particular sort of highlight of concern. I just draw members' attention to recommended conditions 2 and 3 at the end of the report, because there the officer who was involved with this last, who's unfortunately moved on to pastures new, has recommended 2 conditions which seek to sort of further explore the potential for further tree planting in parts of the site. So there is a little bit more to be gained potentially through those conditions. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Okay, thank you. Are there new points, or are we going over old points? Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you. I thought I'd just give you my thoughts. I mean, I tend to agree. I think it's a poor design, especially as we're now in the hottest summer we've ever had. And I think, looking at that, I don't think I would like to live in one of those. I'm also very concerned about the roads. Looking at this, when you have visitors coming to people's houses, they're going to end up having to park all over the pavements, aren't they? Because the roads simply aren't wide enough. I think it's a poor design. I would suggest that the developer tries to work with the ward members to improve the design and at least talk to them. We managed to do this to some extent at Tunnel Hill. So it is possible, as long as you have senior planners sat down with you to make sure you don't say anything inappropriate. but I can't see that I'm going to be able to support this. I'm sorry.
Just to confirm, there have been lots of discussions between the ward members and the
Yeah,
developers
I'm sure they have.
with
Yeah.
senior officers and national landscape officers. Come back in, yeah.
On your concerns regarding highways and parking, I've just draw reference to page 70 of the officers' report, and that highlights the comments received from the county council. They have considered parking, and if you don't mind, I like to read things out because I find it can be quite helpful for members. It says the applicant intends to provide a mix of dwelling sizes ranging from 1 bedroom to 5 bedroom dwellings. As revised vehicle tracking drawings have been submitted, the Highway Authority is satisfied that the alignment and geometric design of the shared drives and private parking areas provide adequate space for the safe manoeuvring of vehicles and are therefore considered acceptable. Hope that helps.
If I could come back on that, they may say it's safe and adequate, but if everybody's parked all over the pavement, so they are in many other estates, it's not particularly safe for children who run in between two cars.
I was going to go to a proposal. Are you going to make a proposal, Jeremy? Because I think we've covered absolutely everything, and we're going over all ground, and also things that we actually can't consider as part of this reserve matters application. But it's good that it's been aired because I know it's quite an emotive application. So, Jeremy.
Yeah. Recognising that the development in principle has already been approved, we're coming back for reserve matters. Recognising the work the officers have done to mitigate the development as far as possible, engaging, having heard with the ward members, etc. I'm cognizant of the fact that there are no, in my view, there are no planning reasons why we could turn this down, given the officers are basically telling us to support it. And I really don't want the residents to go through an appeal on this one, so I'm recommending approval of the officers' report.
Thank you, Jeremy. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Nielsen, second. Okay. Can we go to the vote then, please?
So the proposal is to approve the application in line with officer recommendation and the updates of today. Can I have cards for those in favour, please? 6. And those against? Motion's carried, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to commend the officers' work on this because I know they've tried really hard to get as good a scheme. And I'd also like to commend the developers who've worked closely with the team. And I go back to the very first application that we had at this committee after the elections in 2019, which was the Persimmon site on the old Kinetic site, which still gives me palpitations about the loss of trees and everything. So, so I think we're in a much better position now. So thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next item on the 3 applications.
Chair, could I just ask for a 2-minute comfort break, please?
You can, as long as it's not more than 2 minutes. Otherwise, I'll be in there after you. I've got a golf club meal to go to, but I'm not going to make it. So.
Madam Chairman, my apologies, but I've really got to leave now. My taxi's already been out there half an hour. Yeah.
Thank you for coming anyway, Neville.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Living on new build development.
can't see where Paul is, but I can now see he's not there. John's shirt is disguising him. Okay, we're all back. So we'll move on to item 8, which is the application for the Hill Centre. And again, obviously, site visit took place. I'm going to ask Simon to present this report.
Thank you, Chairman. We have a proposal for a new 3G pitch, car park extension and single-storey extension to the front of the existing building to create gym space and reception area at the Hill Centre, which is in Tunnel Hill in Upton. Here's an aerial photograph of the site, which is in this location. See the in here. Here's the Hill Centre. There's the car park. There's the pitches. So on the plan on the top right just shows the area I was pointing to on the aerial photograph. Here's a floor plan to the left of the existing building on site, and elevations of that. You hear me okay? Yeah. Here's an existing plan showing the existing pitches which exist there, parking provision and the existing centre, and this is what's proposed. So the 3D pitch is on the northern of the two pitches, and the extension is to the south side of the building on the front facing the car park. On this plan, I've been advised belatedly by colleagues in community services that the red lines denoting the 5-a-side pitches, and I don't know if you can make them out on that drawing, there's 4 of them. There should be 3. So the next slide corrects the that drawing. That's the point that was raised by colleagues in the Highway Authority. So if the application is successful this evening, clearly they need a plan to correct that inconsistency. But that's the only change, I think, to the well, it is the only change to the pitches. So the pitch is in the same position, but the way in which the pitch is used, it's just 3 of those 5-a-side pitches instead of 4. The other pitches are the same. The yellow is the 7-a-side, the blue is the 9-a-side, and the white is the full size 11-a-side pitch. Now, this was another plan that was submitted at the outset of the application, and it was an inset plan showing the car parking layout, but that was superseded by this plan that came in, I think, in July, which was revision A. So that was reconsulted upon. It's on the website, but that drawing wasn't withdrawn. So there's a sort of a contradiction, let's say, on the plans, but in terms of showing the additional parking spaces. So the next slide which I've added in, which you understand, is basically a zoomed in version of the earlier larger plan showing the parking area in more detail. I have counted on numerous occasions the number of spaces on this plan. I get it to 81 spaces, comprising 76 standard spaces and 5 disabled spaces and 2 motorcycle bays. I think that's one out from the Highway Authority's comment that you'll have noted is reproduced in full on the update sheet. So there's a summary table of the parking provision, so you can see what we've got at the moment and what's proposed and the difference. We can come back to that if we need to. Proposed demolition plan, there's some elements to be demolished in order to make way for the extension, and there's the extension shown in purple on the plan in the bottom left. You can see that in elevation. I've also added, which weren't in the plans distributed to you with the agenda, but which are in the documents that have been on the website for some time, are the light spillage diagrams. This diagram, as you can see, the zeros which surround the sort of, let's say, perimeter of the pitch, are where the lux level is down to 0. So in the top right of that drawing, you just might be able to make out, I think, what are the nearest houses to the scheme, and at those points the lighting level is 0. This is better illustrated perhaps on this diagram, which shows that in sort of colour. So the purple, the sort of blue or I think it's blue or purple areas around the edge are the where it's 0, and then as you get closer to the pitches, obviously the light increases. So modern floodlights are quite efficient now in terms of reducing and mitigating light spillage. So officers are satisfied there wouldn't be harm to neighbouring residents in terms of the addition of the floodlights. Here's some illustrations of the lighting columns with similar lighting information on there. Some photograph views of the pitches and the existing centre and parking area. There we are. So that ends the slide presentation. Your officer's recommendation remains one of approval. The Highway Authority, as I pointed out, have made a further representation in objection to this application, which is summarised in your update sheet. I understand where they're coming from in terms of the stance they've taken on concern about lack of information. It may be that members share that concern. What I would say is the existing pitches, albeit not floodlit, have the capacity to be used in a more intensive way than they are at present, out with the control of the local planning authority, because the way in which the lines are painted on the pitches that exist and how intensively they're used, given that there's an existing recreational use that's lawful, isn't within our control. So I should just say be mindful of that in terms of a sort of a fallback position which could exist relative to what's being asked in terms of increased parking or concern about displacement of parking onto neighbouring streets when looking at what's proposed. Of course, the floodlights will make a difference to the ability to make more use of the pitch, particularly in winter pitches, particularly in the winter months. So that that's acknowledged, but I wanted to make that point about capacity for use of the existing existing site. I'll leave it at that because I think the other matters are covered in the report. The other elements of the update sheet bits before you, again, as well as including a rebuttal, I think, or a response to some degree from the council's community services team to the highway comments, which I think follow them in the update sheet. There is again just some corrections to the references to the National Planning Policy Framework, the updates to that of the relevant policies that replace the references in the original report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. We don't have any parish council representative. Could I call Mr. Andrew Astill, resident and objector, to speak now, please? And as you know, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors and members of the Planning Committee. I speak today as an individual of Tunnel Hill, but my points reflect, I believe, many objections submitted during the process. This application is fundamentally a bad plan being considered hurriedly and potentially without due regard to due process. It's a bad plan because it reduces community access to a natural existing green space. A large area of green space currently accessible to all is to be replaced by a paywall protected plastic pitch. It fails visually and environmentally. Replacing a usable grass pitch with plastic surrounded by a 4.5 metre fence and erecting 15-metre floodlights makes an existing rural community asset look like a prison yard. The operating lights and noise, with due respect to officers' analysis, until 10 p.m. at night will harm local tranquility and extend significant disruption to people of the area. The plan as it stands is also unsafe for users of the facility and residents alike. The centre's entrance is via a small residential street serving 3 cul-de-sacs. This street is accessed via the main A4104, a road that becomes severely overburdened when Hanley Road floods, and where the 40 mile/h speed limit is routinely ignored. Worcestershire Local Highway Authority rightly recommend refusing this application, and they've recommended it twice, due to inadequate infrastructure and parking provision. And this leads me on to a business case paradox. To dismiss and rebut the Highways Authority's concern, the applicant makes 2, in my view, contradictory submissions. One submission claims there will not be an increase in usage. The other presents an overspill parking plan, pushing 120 cars onto nearby residential streets and the A4104, even, according to the diagram in the website, directing drivers to park opposite junctions in direct breach of the highway code. The applicant cannot have it both ways. Either the usage increases, bringing severe traffic, noise and disruption, or usage stays the same, rendering this an expensive folly with a business case that fails and wastes public funds. Finally, I do believe that due process has been compromised. The council's leading parking officer, who provided the initial parking response, is deeply involved with Welland Juniors Football Club, a primary beneficiary. That is a clear conflict of interest. Have residents impacted by his proposed overspill parking proposals been consulted? I don't think so. Have other process breaches occurred? I don't know. But given such doubts, I urge the committee to refuse this application. In my conclusion, this is a poorly planned project that has used selective data in place of full detailed analyses to push through a flawed application. I urge members of this committee to recognise the weakness of the business case, heed the local authority's recommendation, highway authority's recommendation, and reject this application. Thank you.
Tyler to stand up now, please. Where's Rob? Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am Rob Tyler, Area Manager for Freedom Leisure, and I am proud to oversee Upton Hill Community Centre on behalf of the Council. I strongly support this application, which will help secure the centre's future and transform it into a thriving community hub for well-being. This proposal directly supports the Council's commitment to healthier, safer and stronger communities. It also supports the development of the community hubs for wellbeing through the Community Infrastructure Investment Plan and the Connected Communities Strategy by strengthening neighbourhood and creating opportunities for residents to connect, participate and thrive. Importantly, it also aligns with the Malvern Hills District Collaborative Plan and the NHS 10-year health plan with their focus on prevention, early intervention and supporting people to live healthier, more independent lives. At Freedom Leisure, we see every day how physical activity and community connection can contribute to that preventative approach. We see children gaining confidence and developing healthy habits, adults improving physical and mental health, and older residents combating loneliness and people managing long-term conditions through activity and support. The evidence is clear. People who are physically active and socially active have better health outcomes and improved mental well-being. The 3G pitch will provide a reliable year-round opportunity for sport and physical activity. The fitness suite will be the first in the local area. Our Healthy Communities team will expand opportunities for young people, women and girls, older adults, people with disabilities and those needing health and wellbeing support. I am aware of concerns raised by some local residents regarding parking capacity. However, the centre has received no reports from user groups or residents indicating a shortage of parking spaces. To provide reassurance, the centre will actively manage activity schedules to minimise any overlap between peak football periods and larger community activities. Gym usage is typically spread throughout the day and does not create significant peak demand. In addition, our green travel plan aims to reduce reliance on our car travel. The Hill Centre is a valued community asset but has operated at a financial loss for over 15 years. This proposal will help secure its long-term future and will reduce reliance on public subsidy. With the LGR ahead, ongoing local authority support cannot be guaranteed. Without investment now, the centre's long-term viability is at risk. And finally, members, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to secure the centre's future, transforming it into a community hub for wellbeing and delivering lasting benefits for residents. I respectfully ask you to support this application.
Thank you, Rob. So I'll go to the ward members. Who wants to go first?
Okay, good evening again, Council. This is quite difficult for me. I'm split both ways. I'm aware the Hill Centre needs investment. It loses money, as you've just heard, every year. If things don't change, it's not going to be there. I can guarantee when the unitary authority takes over, if it's losing money, they will kill it as fast as they can. They're going to have no choice because they will be inheriting a debt of half of 700 million, something around about there. And I certainly welcome the gym and the cafe. I think they're excellent, but I'm very unsure about the 3G plastic pitch. But I will listen to my fellow councillors before making my mind up. The pitch consists of rubber, crumb, plastic particles. Now these, with the best will in the world and the scrubbers and everything that's designed, will end up in the River Severn. And we're trying to stop pollution getting into our rivers. I think everybody agrees with that. And what you might not know is that the EU is banning 3G pitches as from 2031. As it is now, you can't put a new one in. All you can do is repair existing ones. And they have a life of approximately between 12 and 14 years. This isn't long term. This pitch is going to have to be disposed of at some stage. And if we do follow the EU and decide to ban them, what are we going to fit in place? There are 4G, 5G and 6G pitches, but none of these are approved by any of the sports governing bodies at the moment. I'm mainly concerned about the parking. Highways have asked for 140 to 160 spaces. Now, they're the people who we go to each time. They're the experts. And how many times have I heard in committee when I said, can we do this? Can we change that? No, Highways have said, they're the law. We have to follow them. I've never heard us break in faith with Highways. We've always strictly followed it. And the only reason that this is here today, if it was anybody else's application rather than a Malvern Hills one, I can tell you it wouldn't have even got to committee. It would have just been refused because of Highways' recommend for refusal, which they've done twice. Residents are very concerned about the overspill. They do have problems at the moment. However, they suck it up. I've been told they won't suck it up in the future if things get worse. I'm also concerned about the lack of a puffing crossing over the A4104. I'm told that this doesn't meet the threshold for a contribution. Well, when the 60 houses were built across the other side of the A4104, they didn't meet the threshold for a contribution. But you start putting in all these things together, and we need to be able to get our children safely across. I would be happier if the 3G pitch wasn't approved. I would certainly be happy then to vote for everything else. However, as I said, I won't make my mind up until I've heard the debate. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Owenson?
Just for the benefit of the other councillors, the reason I think why this has come forward, there's an awful lot of playing pitches in Malvern. Unfortunately, half the year they're all underwater. And we've got two clubs, sorry, not Malvern, Upton. We've got two clubs that are in the area. The rugby club play at the town pitches. Welland Colts, which covers the wider Upton parish area and indeed further still, play primarily here. And with two grass pitches over the winter, it is very difficult to enable both of those teams to play. Now, be under no illusion, those teams are juniors. And if a junior doesn't get a chance to play rugby over the winter, they stop playing rugby and go do something else. They probably go and sit in front of a screen. So that's why the 3G is important. It ensures that the pitch can be used more often during the winter and enables the rugby club to move up there and the Welland Colts to continue to use the same space. In terms of the car parking, it's interesting. There are more pitches in town and there are fewer car parking spaces in the town football pitches. So this new provision increases the steps. Now, I'm a little bit annoyed at Highways, if I'm honest, because what we're talking about here is an extension of use through the planning application, which is the gym, but then the use of the pitches, which, as the officers pointed out, could be used to damnation anyway. If the highways have a problem, and there are problems on the A4104 over speed and over the Puffin crossing, they need to address those issues. I'm completely with Martin on this one. They need to reduce the speed. The town council have asked to have the speed reduced. They need to look at putting in the crossing because there's all those new houses going in. But the use of those houses is going to be families, and those families are going to be crossing the road and using these pitches. So again, you're not getting people driving in from Welland to use these pitches at the weekend. It's going to be people crossing the road. So I would rather build the pitches on a sustainable basis near where the people live than encroach into the wider countryside. If we did have to extend this car park, I'm thinking, well, that's just going to eat up more countryside. We're going to have to find a new piece of land adjacent to this, put in a new design, take up more of the countryside to put more car parking spaces in for, as the officers have demonstrated, is an unlikely need. And this idea that the green space and the prison yard's taken away amenity from the locals. So I've managed to get back to running after I've done my stints, and I've been running all around this area on public footpaths and on public green space. There's an overabundance of public footpaths in this area. There's one comes out in the corner of that pitch, it goes down, it then disappears into areas that flood, etc. So dog walkers are not going to be impeded by this. There's plenty of opportunity for people to continue to enjoy the countryside. I think this actually saves the countryside by not requiring a bigger car park. So I'm keen to hear what the other councillors think about this, but I think this is a good use of land in a facility close to a town where the residents of the town already use that and can make more use of it and provide some hopeful futures for our kids in playing sport.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll open it up now to general debate. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very interested to hear the ward councillors' comments and indeed to visit the site yesterday. And thank you very much. I agree. It looks like a really positive development of this site. In principle, I think it's a positive development. And I think the fact of having an all-weather pitch, clearly given the sort of weather that we have in principle again, is a good idea. The question I have is taking on board the point made about the microplastic pollution potential, and particularly for the River Severn. And I read that you could install perimeter boards, drainage silt traps, and even just simple procedures like boot cleaning and brush off zones for players on the 3G pitch. And I just wondered if the officers could advise me and the committee as to whether those options have been looked at, considered, and whether a condition is a practical option.
Do you want to move on, Simon? Okay.
It's a matter. I think a condition could be either one of the recommended conditions could be expanded upon, or an extra condition could be added to ask for some mitigation in that regard. I don't think that's unreasonable, and it probably wouldn't add significantly to the cost of the development.
Councillor Bennett, next, please.
Yes, I know this area quite well. I was deputy mayor at one point, and basically, the 3 5-a-side pitches are going to bring considerable amounts of traffic and numbers of people, which is a little bit concerning. But I totally agree with Councillor Nielsen's condition in terms of the silt traps, because that is totally unacceptable. The runoff would eventually end up in the main drainage system, which goes straight into the River Severn. We cannot do that in good conscience now. Microplastics are a huge problem, and that if the council installs microplastic pitches, we're just adding to a problem which everybody else would not want us to do. I think as long as they schedule those 5-a-side, basically kids pitches, so that they are at times when the other activities are minimal, hopefully they will have enough parking, because I mean they do normally, but that I did not see that before, and that is they are hugely busy, those matches, because it's not only the kids that are playing, all their families come to watch them as well. And that Councillor Owenson is right. Yeah, they can't do them down at the bottom opposite the church because it's flooded for half the year, but that will make it more of a regular event and actually increase the crowds. And I really think that needs to be very carefully scheduled, and that could be a condition in itself, I think, because you've got to allow for that capacity, or you are building up a problem for the residents, which we can actually see that happening now. I can see it anyway from my experience of the area.
Councillor Driscoll and then Councillor Gallagher.
So I too was going to echo support for Councillor Nielsen's suggestions, because microplastics are a significant issue, and if there is some way of capturing those and stopping those from going to the River Severn, then all to the better. So I would be very supportive of that condition. In general, I think I'm moving to being in favour. Anything that we can do to get people active, particularly the younger generation, and away from the digital mobile phone. We have a health and obesity crisis, so encouraging physical activity has to be a good thing. Generally, it's good for physical and mental well-being. Having said that, obviously, you know, we can't ignore highways issues around traffic. I suppose my question here is, you know, I could potentially see a significant opportunity to link our support of active travel with encouraging or sustainable use of this centre through obviously walking, cycling, potential opportunity for discounted annual membership, for example, for those turning up regularly through walking or cycling or even, you know, Worcestershire on demand. Is there a condition or how it has plans been developed for active travel associated with the development of this centre? I don't know whether it's something highways can respond to or planning.
Highways will respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. So as part of our assessment, we do fully consider active and sustainable travel because the old MPPF, but now the new one, published in August 2026, requires a vision-led approach. In terms of our assessment, we have considered it that the challenge we have here is to enable us to do that would require contributions towards improvements across the network to promote infrastructure, as you've heard from Councillor Allen, a pedestrian crossing. But when you look at it in terms of the need of the necessity for the development to come forward and meeting the SIL requirements, it doesn't meet the test. So the Highway Authority can't ask for it. We can't ask for a contribution towards the improvement. So we're kind of in this position where we're having to rely on the existing infrastructure that we have to support an expansion of a facility. And that's where the Highway Authorities come to the conclusion that we've got concerns about the level of parking that the proposals could generate. The Highway Authority estimates that we need another between 140 to 160 spaces. The problem for that is that even with promoting sustainable transport, there will still be an element of additional trips which will be made to the site. And we're concerned about visitors to the site and the community of impact with the gym and the pitches, because from our experience as transport professionals, the peak tends to be in the PM and also at weekends when most people are free, we're not at work. And that will lead to spill onto the surrounding roads, which then leads to a highway safety concern pretty much on Milestone Drive and its proximity to the A4 104. So, you know, we're not trying to prevent this development, and I think if you read our comments, we're trying to be constructive because we're trying to find additional information and ways that we can try and resolve the issues as a Highway Authority. But at the moment, we can't support the application in its current form because we don't have the evidence to make us feel satisfied that can be brought forward sustainably at this moment in time.
Just conscious of the highways issue then, and the comments that were made by Councillor Bennett behind about some kind of scheduling of use, for example, of the 5 side pitches. I just, you know, would like to ask highways, given that they are here today, how often do you see the need in a year for 160 parking spaces for this facility? Thank you.
So the assessment for that need is based on all the pitches being in use. So say the centre was used for a tournament, so a local football tournament, for example, so, you know, a couple of times a year. And then you've also got the existing use of the gym in operation and other operations of the site. You know, it doesn't exist at the moment because obviously you don't have flood lighting. So obviously that increases the potential for those situations to occur.
Yes, thank you. I should apologise to the committee. I didn't make it clear on the microplastics. There is, if you read it, there is already provision for boot cleaning to trap the and silt traps, but that isn't the problem. The problem is that the microplastics, if you do a bit of research on it, get into the players' clothes and into their hair, and they take them home and they have a shower and they wash their gear, and that's how it gets into the water supply, and that's what I'm concerned about. As I say, it's not a perfect world. I don't want the Hill Centre to close. I would be much happier if this committee decided that some money should be given to highways as a part payment towards putting in a puffing crossing. That would certainly make quite a big difference. I think if you could put a condition into schedule so you're not going to be swamped, it's fine. You're saying tournaments only a couple of years might be very popular during the summer holidays. You might be having them every other weekend. And you know, why should the residents who live there suddenly start suffering? Because if they do start suffering, as the county council, I promise you, I'll bring in a residential parking scheme as fast as I can, or double yellow lines, which will make it really difficult for everybody. So I'm not saying it should be turned down, but I don't think at the moment I can support it unless I see some constructive conditions. Thank you.
Yeah, on the point of conditions and a condition sort of around trying to schedule activity, I don't think that we could word a practically enforceable condition that would in effect impose some fixed management regime on how various facilities are used at the sports centre and be able to monitor that. That's a management issue for the people operating the centre, not a planning enforcement issue. Just from a practical point of view, you know, how would you detect a breach? I think we have to consider that when imposing a condition. You know, has to meet a series of legal tests. So, and I think if we'd have been able to impose recommend a condition of that nature, we would have added one to the list of conditions, because you know, if a condition makes something more acceptable and it meets the tests, then it's worth adding it. But I wouldn't want us to. You can come up with the words, obviously, and ask for you know, a management plan to be submitted. But I'm thinking about practical enforcement of it subsequently.
But it's sorry to interject. I mean, that seems to be something that is a sensible way forward, a management plan, and I would have thought that the Hill Centre would also want there to be a sensible management plan, because the last thing they're going to want is actually people complaining about not being able to park. And also there are other options with you know, Worcestershire on demand and stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying one way or the other, but it's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? But I think practically, sorry Jeremy, you want to come back? So I think, I mean, I'm not sure we can put wording in. I don't know whether Simon can come up with some wording about working with the operators, which may well not be enforceable and therefore not a legal condition, but there probably is some wording.
I mean, I think the issue here is, so the site was close to closure before Freedom Leisure took this site over. The purpose of Freedom Leisure taking over this site was to encourage use of what is a good community facility. So even if this plan was not there, the current management would have the desire to increase the use of the pitches and increase the use of the facilities they have. Indeed, I know they've started doing classes and yoga, etc., etc. So it seems almost an oxymoron to say we've granted Freedom Leisure the opportunity to increase the use of this site, and then say, but now we're worried that you've increased the use of the site. I totally take the point that nobody, you know, it will be managed to the capacity of the site. There is no reason today why Freedom Leisure couldn't say, for example, let's hold a fete up there and let's have hundreds of people turn up and attend a fete. So I think we've got to be very careful about trying to impose restrictions on a business that is trying to provide a community benefit by improving the use of an existing site.
You said it better than I could, Jeremy. So I'm going.
All I wanted to do was to propose we went to.
Okay, so what I was about to do, yeah. But if you'd like to make a proposal,
I would just like to propose that we approve this application, taking into consideration some of the discussion. I don't know if we can add in any more on the microcrum around boards. I take Councillor Allen's point that some of it's already in there. But if we can do more, that would be good. So basically approval, but with consideration for the discussion. Thank you.
can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that. I think before Councillor Allen said that it was already in there, I was thinking condition 10 might be the place to add something in which relates to the confirmation of the pitch beforehand and after. But if the officers believe that the retention of units on site, accepting Councillor Allen has said about microplastics, but there's microplastics in our clothes. The kids are playing in nylon with plastic boots, so there is microplastics there. But if the officer thinks that that would be an appropriate condition to add, that might be the appropriate place to do it.
Councillor Allen, Simon wants to come back.
I'm going to sort of throw a lifeline to my colleague in highways, insofar as because they're as is their right, they've advanced a comment of objection to the proposal. What we haven't got, as far as I'm aware, is any conditions they would wish to see imposed regarding the highway aspects of the proposal, if they felt any were necessary, if members are minded to approve the scheme. So I wanted to ask that question because otherwise we'll miss the opportunity, because we can't add conditions after the event, because that would be out with the scope of your decision. And our sort of hands are tied unless we've got a resolution to delegate to officers to discuss that. So I just asked that question because there isn't any. I don't think we've got any highway related conditions other than obviously the condition that relates to the plans and the development being carried out in accordance with the plans.
Thank you, Simon. If members are moving towards minding to be approved application, obviously some highway conditions would be suitable. I think I would recommend that the inclusion of an updated travel plan, which considers the additional uses for the site and promotes quite, I was going to say achievable, that's not the right word, but good targets in terms of promoting sustainable transport for the development. The other one I was just thinking and mulling around in my mind, but I would need advice from the planning officers whether they think it meets the test, is a parking management plan. You can condition a parking management plan if you felt it was necessary, members, which would be related to how they manage the existing parking site and try and prevent the overspill onto local roads. I think we would have requested that as a highway authority if we got the evidence that had moved us to a position of being comfortable with the development. We would have probably still requested that.
Through you, Chairman, if I might have just clarify, what would you expect that to include? That plan. What sort of level? What sort of detail?
So it would include the level of parking provision across the site in terms of total EV bays and disabled parking bays. Also, it could include what measures they would take place where they recognise they've got a significant demand on certain dates. So we talk about events, we talk about perhaps when all the pitches at peak periods where all the uses might be in, and what measures they may need to put in. So as Councillor Owenson mentioned, they could set up a fete up there, and they potentially could do for a day. But they would obviously, that traffic parking management plan would enable measures to be put in place of what they do to manage that situation. And it could include how they communicate that with the highway authority, and other key stakeholders to ensure the highway remains safe.
From Beverley. I need a seconder. Martin, is this a new point or is?
Well, it's just to ask if you could add another condition, or those proposing the second would consider a condition, please. I just want. I mean, it's looking like it's going to be approved. I have the feeling in the room that's what's going to happen. If you are going to consult again with Highways and make this a condition to talk to Highways, can we condition that there is a talk and negotiation about? I know they can't ask for SIL money, but there's nothing to stop Malvern Hills from making a contribution towards a crossing. And I don't think that's unreasonable. The local residents, a lot of residents, especially young children, are going to be crossing the A4104. I think it's quite reasonable to ask that.
I think that can't be a condition. I don't think we can include that as part of this discussion. Whether something goes on behind the scenes, I think that's a different matter, isn't it? Simon, yeah. Me.
I'm happy to second it. If Simon's got the wording of the additional condition, I would be happy to support that. If not, I would be happy to support approval with delegated authority to agree the condition if that's the preferred way to do it.
So just to clarify, you would like to see the final wording of the condition, would you, before, or you're delegating it to officers?
Delegated to the officer in consultation with the local members.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Delegating to the officer.
Okay, so I think we're there. We've got a proposer. Jeremy, you're happy to second. Okay, so we'll go to the vote.
Could I just ask Simon one question, please? In terms of the 3G pitch and the potential pollution, is that going to be a new condition or is it going to be an extension of the existing condition? And if so, which condition, could you tell me?
Well, reference was made to the issue already been touched on, but I didn't spot it in the conditions. Am I mistaken there? No. So we'd have I think we'd have a fresh condition. It might be referenced in the report, but I think we'd have a fresh condition for that. I think.
How would you describe that? Would it be a condition in relation to
mitigation of what do we call it? Microplastic pollution.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'm just being advised that we could it might be advisable to modify condition 3, which deals with drainage, to incorporate that. Yeah. We can certainly include that.
Okay, so we're still debating when we've already had a proposal and a seconder. So I want to end this now. Thanks. So can we just be clear? We've got proposal from Beverley and we've got a seconder from Jeremy, which includes the conditions that we've discussed and some of the rewording in conjunction with officers and ward members. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can I just sum that up? Is that okay? Okay. So we are. The recommendation is for approval in line with the officer recommendation and to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to grant planning permission subject to the planning conditions set out in the committee report and the update. Also, additional conditions to be agreed in consultation with the ward members in respect to the provision of an updated travel plan to promote sustainable drainage, transport, parking management plan, and the mitigation of microplastic pollution and modification of condition 3, and allowing for any subsequent amendments to the conditions as required by the planning of Director and Infrastructure. Okay.
Perfect.
Can I have all those for approval, please? Okay, and against? And And any abstentions? Okay, and motion's carried, Chair.
So thank you, everybody. 3 very meaty applications.
Yeah. It's a useful one to keep hold of as well.
7.
Yeah.